Yo, yo, yo. Welcome back to another video. I'm ready to get this one started. Let me just load up my two screens. We'll get the rest of them when we get this one up. I don't know what I'm supposed to say or trying to say. Um, anyways, we got this one. We wanted to end it off on a good note. So this is why a Goofy movie is better than you remember. This was a good movie. I think they made a Goofy movie too, or maybe it was just a movie featuring the same actors,
This video is brought to you by
or maybe it
viewers
was a
like you.
prequel,
Thanks for supporting my nostalgia clickbait.
like it happened
And
before.
I get it. I get that you look at a video like this and you think, all right, here's some cringy avocado toast type trying to capitalize on the Powerline t-shirts that they're selling at Target, which makes it really difficult to try and communicate openly and honestly, especially on this platform, about something that isn't just good, but like fascinating in how and why it's good. Please trust me when I say this. A Goofy movie might be one of the most amazing films I've ever watched, but more importantly, rewatched. And if you give me a minute, I promise that I'll be able to explain exactly why this film in particular is making a comeback in recent years. Strangely enough, this film is built in a way to be a nostalgic time bomb. This isn't just your everyday nostalgia. It's like super nostalgia. But beyond that, this might be one of, if not the best Disney film in their catalog. And I mean that. I really mean that. This film is disturbingly good. Now, if you know my channel, then you're probably thinking like, okay, he's losing his mind over the fact that this film is a musical. And yeah, you're not entirely wrong. But have you ever thought about how conspicuous it is that this film in particular is in fact a musical? Like I said in my other videos, the Disney Renaissance came about when genius Howard Ashman brought musical theater to the animated feature film. And after his death in '91, the business majors in Disney did everything they could to capitalize on that success. From TV shows based on those properties to straight to VHS sequels, which are just so bad.
Come on, monkey, little birdie, want to talk to monkey, have nice banana, hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo.
But it's not just that this film is a musical. You might even go so far as to call it the Disney musical, the prototypical Disney musical. Look at me, I'm so fancy. But in many ways, it does what it does better than most of the Disney Renaissance films. Let me explain. Part 1, the establishing number. Okay, so after an exceptionally vivid nightmare about Max becoming his father, we get After Today. And immediately you're confronted with a level of proficiency that you didn't expect from the Oh Yuck movie. See, every good musical, and I guess really every musical, begins the exact same way, with a number that establishes the world. Like in Les Mis, it's Look Down, that tells us about Valjean being a prisoner and Javert being the captor. Little Shop of Horrors, again, Howard Ashman, it starts with Skid Row, which tells us about, Skid Row. Even Book of Mormon has Hello, which tells us about what the elders do. And that's something that Ashman brought with him to Disney. Little Mermaid begins with Fathoms Below because we're at sea. Beauty and the Beast has that opening number Bell. And actually put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that. Aladdin has Arabian Nights. Lion King has Circle of Life. Pocahontas has The Virginia Company. And Steady as a Beating Drum. Technically, Pocahontas has 2. The one with the racial slur in it opens with all the racisms. Hercules has The Gospel Truth. Mulan has Honor to Us All. And Tarzan also has music in it. And then you have Brother Bear, which is
I think I watched Tarzan.
And then
Tarzan
we have
too.
Actually, we're gonna come back to this one too. Give me a minute. Anyway,
kid.
After Today sets up the world that this film is set in. It's the last day of school before summer vacation, and Max is about to pull a stunt. That's it. That's all we gotta know. But there's something else about this number, because it isn't just the establishing number for our show. See, during production of The Little Mermaid, Howard Ashman and Jeffrey Katzenberg would bump heads and disagree a lot on different aspects of the film. At one point, Katzenberg insisted on removing a part of your world, Ariel's I Want song. And if you don't know, an I Want song is like really super critical in every musical. It tells you what the main character wants, and it helps the audience connect to their motivations. It's just like crazy, super important. Removing that song would be like cutting the main character out of the story. It's basically impossible to write a good and accessible musical without it. But Katzenberg wanted to cut it out. Ashman put his foot down and said no, and ultimately Ashman was right. So after the immense success of The Little Mermaid and finding out that Ashman was dying due to complications of AIDS, Katzenberg basically gave Ashman whatever he wanted for the production of Beauty and the Beast. Katzenberg even moved the entire production to New York so Ashman wouldn't have to travel. Ashman was right about what made The Little Mermaid so successful, and Katzenberg acknowledged that and basically wrote Ashman a blank check in creating Beauty and the Beast. So, Katzenberg going completely hands-off for Beauty and the Beast is why it opens with like this 5.5-minute number. It was Ashman flexing as hard as he could, because it isn't just the establishing number like you'd expect from other shows, it doubles as Belle's I Want song.
There must be more than this provincial life.
as well as introducing us to our primary villain, Gaston.
Just watch, I'm going to make Belle my wife.
This song serves like 2.5 functions, which allows the show to hit the ground running, and it's one of the many reasons why Beauty and the Beast is by far the best Disney Renaissance film. And it's exactly what happens here in a Goofy movie.
No more Maxie the Geek, no more Goof of the Week like before. Gonna talk to Roxanne and not feel like a fool. I need a new me, plus some positive proof that I'm not just a goof.
We aren't just introduced to how the world works, it's all coming from Max's point of view, and it doubles as his I Want song.
She looked right through me, and who could blame her?
So to be clear, in this film, in the first 5 minutes, it opens with a number that serves a stronger narrative function than any of the other first numbers you hear in the Disney Renaissance, except for one. We know what's going on, it's the end of the school year, and it's almost summer vacation. We know what our main character wants, what his motivations are. He likes Roxanne, but he feels like he's not good enough for her, and he needs to prove himself. So structurally speaking, this film is already stronger than Frozen, and it only goes up from here. Part 2, How to Stand Out.
Are you ready?
It's pretty interesting topic.
Okay, so immediately following the opening, we get Standout, which if we're going to explain this number and this scene, then we need to talk about that cow movie. Widely considered to be the film that killed 2D animation until Princess and the Frog in 2009, 2004's Home on the Range is one of the strangest ways to spend an evening, inebriated or otherwise. Now, if you haven't seen Home on the Range, it's basically about these 3 cows who go bounty hunting to save their farm. But they bump into this guy who's like a secret cattle rancher who can hypnotize cows with his yodeling, and what he does is he goes around to all the ranches and he steals their herds so that the farmers can't pay their mortgage, which means that they have to foreclose on their land. Meanwhile, he sells the herds for capital and then goes around to auctions in disguise and buys the land to basically become a land baron. And you might be thinking, wow, that's a really detailed description of the film's villain, which is also somehow the entire plot. And you'd be right. See, Home on the Range proves something that a lot of people really hated about my Tarzan video. TLDR, that video is basically that none of the characters are singing, it's just Phil Collins' disembodied voice singing narration to the audience. None of the characters are singing, so the songs and the meaning behind those songs don't really connect with the characters on screen. And this weird cow movie shows why that's so important. Because of like the 4 or 5 songs in this film, only one is actually sung by one of the characters. And that character is the villain.
The sweetest way of rustling yet devised.
So even though all the music was written by the same guy who wrote all the music in The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Pocahontas, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and even Tangled, when you look back at this film, you only really remember the psychedelic yodeling of Alameda Slim because he's the only character who actually sung a song. And if I'm being completely honest, I really like this number.
Till he drives and doggies well, which ain't easy when your chaps are labeled XXXXL.
But like, I can't even remember the cows' names. I want to say that one is named like Becky, but I don't think that's right. They just have no characterization because they aren't included in the musical structure of this film. So when we see Max lip syncing to the fictitious pop star Powerline's hit Stand Out, we aren't just listening to some branded pop song designed to play over the credits. It's a musical number that's stitched into the fabric of the show, just like all the others. Even when you just consider that it's Powerline that's actually singing, this performance brings the music into the diegesis of the world, instead of just being a narrator's disembodied voice telling us how we as the audience are supposed to feel. And having Max lip sync to this particular number only does a better job at tying these characters to the meaning of the song, which, when you look at it functionally in terms of the narrative, if you treat this as Max singing, this tune serves as a reinforcement or secondary I Want song.
If I could make you stop and take a look at me instead of just...
Max just really wants to stand out and have Roxanne notice him, which is a continuation of what we saw in the opening of the film. But here's the thing. There are no other films that have done this in the Disney catalog. I don't even think I've ever seen this in like a musical, maybe. Max is satisfying what he was singing about in the I Want section of the opening number while singing another tune, clarifying why he's doing the thing that he's doing right now and reinforcing his wants. It's like functional rebar for how the numbers in this show tell the story and express the character's feelings. It's phenomenal! Part 3. This is a cartoon. Following Max's desperate attempt to get Roxanne to notice him, the audience being introduced to Goofy's job, learning about Goofy's motivation for going on a vacation with Max, and then Max lying to Roxanne about going to the Powerline concert, we get On the Open Road.
Do you need a break from modern living?
Now, this number demonstrates a power that this film has that none of the other Disney Renaissance films have. See, This film is set in that like Disney cartoon world. This isn't really supposed to just be an animated version of the real world. We're looking at a continuation of those old silly symphonies from the 30s where Mickey, Donald, and Goofy would get into all kinds of hijinks. This is a world where Goofy has to negotiate with a sentient piano with absolutely no explanation. Donald Duck gets into like an axe fight with fire. Crazy things happen all the time that really should be lethal, but aren't. You're working on a completely different level in terms of suspending your disbelief when you're in this world. And you can see this exact same kind of thing in A Goof Troop, the show where this film comes from. So when we actually get to a Goofy movie, there's no such thing as Bigfoot, cars don't float, and nothing in the scene adheres to any laws of physics anywhere. So coming back to this number, it begins with Goofy's keys rattling in the ignition, followed by the muffler, then some pots and pans on the roof of the car, followed by Goofy whistling because he can hear all this. Then at some point we get some nuns, some country singers jump out of a piano being played by some random guy on the back of a truck, and there's even a literal dead guy. But when the number ends, we hear Goofy humming along to the tune as if all of that actually happened. So was this song diegetic or non-diegetic? Was everybody able to hear the music, or does this musical number exist outside of the world of the characters? Well, it doesn't actually matter. See, Senpai Ashman once talked about how animation could be better suited for musicals than the theater because it's easier to suspend your disbelief.
Music may have more license in the animated film in the same way that it does in the theater, simply because the level of reality is different. There's no game being played by a theater audience. We know that's happening right in front of us, and it's painted scenery and it's not real.
Hearing people randomly break out into song is completely unrealistic and forces you to dramatically shift your suspension of disbelief. In fact, he once said this about live-action musical films.
Do you not think that making a film out of a musical is a different process entirely than making a film out of a play?
I think
And do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, it's an exercise in